Kateri, have you?
I think this is everybody.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started then? So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you with us. This is a very important topic. And we're very, very pleased to have Kent Weimer with us today. I took a seminar, actually it was a whole, I think it was 6 or 8 separate sessions, the whole workshop on planned giving from Kent some years ago. And I have to say it was one of the best that I've ever attended on any kind of fundraising. So I was thrilled when he agreed to do this. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. He is a chartered advisor in philanthropy and the director of trusts, estates, and gift planning at the Parkland Foundation in Dallas. He works with donors and their advisors to make estate gifts, create endowments, and make donations with assets other than cash, although I'm sure you take cash, Kent.
We do.
His extensive expertise in fund development comes from over 40 years of experience in community-based healthcare, higher education, international healthcare, and cultural organizations. He's been actively involved in the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners for over 20 years, including leadership roles at the Chicago and Dallas councils, and is past chair of the National CGP board. Kent is on the board of governors of the Dallas Estate Planning Council and has been a volunteer facilitator for local chartered advisor in philanthropy study groups. He is also a consultant with Fablanthropy, the intersection of fabulous and philanthropy. I just would also say that, you know, a lot of us think that planned giving is something that will eventually get big enough to have a planned giving program, and we just keep putting it off and putting it off. And my advice would be, don't put it off. Just jump in and at least, you know, get started with having it included in part of your strategy. So having said all that, I'm going to turn it over to the expert, Mr. Kent Weimer.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be with this group. Joanna and I talked about this, I don't know, 2.5 years ago. And then lo and behold, we got a pandemic. So it got put on hold, but I'm glad at least we can get together virtually. And I would be delighted to get together with your group sometime in person when you do these brown bags in person. So the title of this program is Gift Planning on a Shoestring. And that series of workshops that she referred to, this is like a 1-hour condensed version of, I don't know, like 12 or 18 hours of program on why you need to be doing a gift planning program and why you need to start now. So let's start out with the question. If I were to show you a way that you could raise 75% more money from your donors, would you be interested in that?
Yes.
Of course.
So Dr. Russell James, who is an amazing human being, he's a professor at Texas Tech. He runs a graduate program on charitable financial planning. He has done a tremendous amount of research in the area of philanthropy. And one of his research findings is that if donors include your charity in their estate plans, they're typically going to increase their giving over the next 5 years by 75%. So when people say, oh, we can't take that, we can't put our efforts into raising money for the future, if you get people to include your charity in their estate plans, you're raising money for today and in substantially higher amounts. And it makes sense if you think about it, because think about a will. Who can you leave your stuff to? You leave it to loved ones, you know, kids, grandkids, maybe some very close friends, and charity. That's it. Well, the IRS maybe gets a cut, but we don't care about the IRS. So if they've included a charity in their will, they've elevated that charity to the level of a family member. They now look at that charity differently than they did before. It is now closer to their heart. That charity is now a part of their family, they are now a part of that charity's family. So it only makes sense that they are more supportive currently if they're going to make that kind of long-term commitment. So meet Martha Markey. Martha was a long-time consistent donor to Parkland Foundation. She gave during her lifetime something less than $600. Her typical gift was $25 a year. Occasionally it was $50. There were a few years where she gave 2 gifts rather than 1. So most major gift fundraisers wouldn't even think twice about Martha Markey as a prospect for a major gift. When she died, Parkland Foundation got close to $1 million from her estate. And let's think about why. So she was a retired person. I think she was a school teacher, if I remember right. So she was just a person next door. And she was living on a fixed income. She had a retirement account and she had some investment accounts. And so when she was giving during her lifetime, she was giving out of her checkbook what she felt comfortable giving. But her wealth was in her house. It was in some other real estate she owned. It was in that retirement plan and the investments I mentioned. When you looked at her wealth, it was almost $1 million. We got her entire estate, $800,000 when she passed. So people make some assumptions about charitable gift planning. Oh, you need a big budget. You need somebody like that Weimer guy who's been doing this for 20 years and has taken graduate level courses on becoming a chartered advisor in philanthropy. You need highly trained staff. Well, I'm here to tell you that none of that is true. Each and every one of you, as soon as we hang up today, you can start implementing some of these ideas to encourage donors to include you in their estate plans. So we're going to do 3 things today. Why is charitable gift planning important to you? And why should you absolutely be doing it? And hopefully we've started addressing that already. If you want to raise more money today, get people to include you in their estate plans, and they're going to give you 75% more money now in their annual support of your organization. And Martha Markey, think of her. Think of how many donors you have like that who are older, who are consistent donors, who give you $25 a year or $50 a year. Those are the people you need to be cultivating, because I've been doing this long enough that I know that Martha is not the exception to the rule. She is the rule. That's how this business works. I'm going to give you several simple things that you can start implementing this afternoon. And we're going to get into a conversation about moving beyond checkbook philanthropy. So let's go back to the why a little bit more. So U.S. Trust, now Bank of America Private Bank, every 2 years does a study on high net worth philanthropy. They interview lots of high net worth people specifically about philanthropy. And so here's some findings that are very telling. So almost half of the people interviewed were not satisfied with their charitable giving. And 1 in 5 said they would give more if they were educated about different ways to donate. And almost half of them seek charitable advice. They want advice from somebody on their charitable giving. And 1/3 of them said they would like to have that advice from somebody in the nonprofit world. So high net worth people are unsatisfied with their giving, will give more if they're educated on how to give. They want advice, and they want advice from you. the nonprofit person. So to me, that opens a huge door to welcome these conversations with your donors about more effective ways that they can give. So let's talk about getting started. First thing you should do, as soon as we're done with this call, put a PS on your email that plants a seed for people to do charitable gift planning. The PS I have right now is learn how to give smarter and preserve cash. So hopefully that's enough. I mean, granted, a lot of people aren't even going to read the PS, but those that do, maybe that's going to pique their interest and go, well, wait, how can I give smarter and keep my cash? And I will welcome that conversation with a donor if they ask me that. Some others I use, make a gift that costs you nothing now. That would be like a gift from a will, beneficiary designation, gift from a trust. Want an easy will substitute? Use a beneficiary designation. Getting into where wealth is in people's assets as opposed to their cash, preserve your cash by donating mineral rights, real estate, and other assets. Because wealth is what people own. Wealth is not what's in their checkbooks. Make a gift and receive an income for life. Now this gets a little more complicated, not complicated, a little more technical. There are trusts. There are charitable gift annuities, for example, where a donor makes a contribution, they get a guaranteed income for life, and when the donor dies, what's left goes to the charity. So there are things like that that are at our disposal. Leave part of your retirement assets to charity instead of the IRS. IRA and other retirement assets are the worst assets to give to your kids and grandkids because they're going to pay a lot of tax on it. Better to give your kids and grandkids things like your house and life insurance, things like that, and use retirement accounts to give to charity. And that way they end up giving more than they ever thought possible in a tax efficient way. And one of my favorites is you don't have to be wealthy to make a difference. You know, when we use words like estate and philanthropy, a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, that's the folks in the park cities. They have an estate. I don't have an estate. Well, go into your house, look around. If you own anything, you have an estate. So we have to kind of get people to think that words like estate and philanthropy apply to them, not just the rich people. If we were together in a room, I would say, how many of you are a philanthropist? And a couple of you would raise your hands. And if I were to say, well, how many of you have ever donated time or money to a nonprofit organization? Every single one of you would raise your hands. And I would say, you're a philanthropist. Why don't you think you're a philanthropist? This is not just for rich people. We do a direct mail program. And on the reply vehicles that we include in the direct mail, we have a couple of boxes that can be checked here. I have included Parkland in my estate plans, or I would like to receive information about including Parkland in my estate plans. Very simple. This doesn't cost me anything. This is something our organization is doing anyway. And this gives me lots of leads. More people check the box that I'd like to receive information. But that gives me somebody to call up and hopefully try and meet with in person. But you'd be surprised how many actually check the box. I've already included Parkland in my estate plans, because of those people who in their plans include charity, only 20% of them tell the charity. That means 80%, they and their advisors are the only ones that know. The charity does not know. if you have a website, I've got a whole section in our website about charitable gift planning, so people can, there's a drop down like probably most of you have that say ways to give. Gift planning is one of the ways to give, and it takes you to this portion of the website, and it talks about how making plans and including charity can be so easy, and has my contact information here. I mean, they can just click on this and an email to me will pop up. And on the bottom here, it even has enough information that they could take to an attorney, for example, who's drafting a will. Has our legal name, Parkland Foundation, Dallas, Texas, and our taxpayer ID number. So they don't even have to, I mean, I want them to talk to me, but they don't have to talk to me to include Parkland in their plans. I've given them all the information that they need. And sometimes we'll be the headliner on the front page of our website. You know, that rotates all the time, but occasionally we'll get that space. Stories are so powerful. If the reader of the story can relate to the person the story is about, hopefully what happens, what will go through their mind is, people like me do things like that. That's what you want people to think. You want people like me do things like that. And if it's a story that has a wonderful outcome because of some gift that happened, that then becomes a hero story. And if the person starts thinking in their head who's reading this, oh my gosh, I mean, these aren't the words they're going to use, but this is kind of what's going on. I could become a hero like that person. I could make something that important happen just like that person did. So, you know, do it in your newsletters and on your websites, in your emails, letters, whatever vehicles you have. So this is a great one. This woman left a multi-million-dollar estate gift to Parkland Foundation and helped us create a health faith initiative where we work with churches in the very poorest parts of Dallas County where our patients live, to try and connect them with the church communities who then help them navigate their post-hospital care. Make sure they're getting their prescriptions filled, make sure they're getting to their follow-up appointments. And this was something that we wanted to do for years, didn't have the money to do it. This woman died and specifically wanted the money to go to pastoral care. And so we used that to create this wonderful, wonderful program. So that's a great hero story. So you want somebody reading this story to go, oh, I could do that. I could become a hero for Parkland too. This is another great story. Parkland saved my daddy's life. And this is an interesting one. Our first gift from this woman was her $500,000 estate gift that we received. I had an attorney from Memphis call me and say, one of my clients passed away. You're a beneficiary of her trust. And so I asked the name, and I'm looking up the name in our database, and her name isn't there. And so I asked for the spelling of it and to make sure I was looking it up correctly. She had never made a donation to Parkland until we got her estate gift. And a lot of it, she was a school teacher, and her husband sold office supplies. So just everyday people next door. And they were very frugal, so they probably didn't do many donations during their life, but her entire estate went to charity when she died. One thing we do that costs a little bit of money, but not much, is we do a lunch and learn series. Jesus, I look at the dates on this slide. This is outdated. I need to put a new one in here. But we still do this. Well, now we were doing them by Zoom during the pandemic. Now we'll go, hopefully soon, go back to doing them in person. We do a lunch and learn series. We provide a simple box lunch, invite people to come and learn about Parkland. We give them a content expert from the hospital where they come, and one of my favorite stories of an outcome of this lunch and learn series was somebody introduced me to somebody else who they thought might be interested in Parkland. So that I invited them to come to one of these lunch and learn series. They were really intrigued. The next time he came to one, he brought his partner with him to get him interested as well. They started to become donors. They at one point then said, you know, we like Parkland so much, we're both going to include you in our estate plan. So went from somebody who had some mild interest, getting them engaged through this lunch and learn series, and they became regular donors, and we're in their estate. I mean, perfect scenario. Those things happen. We do some mailings where we send letters to people. This is my favorite letter. It's from David Ratliff. He's an electrician, blue collar guy. And in the letter is from him. He talks about, you know, I do what I can to support the good work of Parkland. And I recently updated my will to leave a bequest to Parkland. And in other parts of the letter that you can't see here, he goes on to tell why. He was in a car accident, was treated by Parkland in our trauma department, so he felt very grateful to Parkland. And people can relate to David Ratliff. I mean, he's an electrician. He's just an everyday kind of guy. And he's including us in his estate plans. And oh, by the way, you can talk to this nice Kent Weimer. He helped me so much, gave me all the information I needed. And you'll become a member of the 1894 Society, which is our legacy society. People who include us in their estate plans get to be a member of that. So again, this is a story that's powerful that people can relate to, and they can be thinking in their head, geez, if this electrician can leave Parkland in their estate plans, maybe that's something I could do as well. So I also do a series of postcards, and I like to make them creative. So what I want is, I want somebody when they get their mail, I want that picture to be enticing enough that they actually turn it over and look at the back of it. I mean, most people going through their mail, because everything is electronic now, all your bills, all that kind of stuff, that's all electronic. And so most people are just like sitting by the recycling bin and throwing the mail in the recycling bin as they go through it. So I try to make them creative enough that they're going to actually turn it over and look at it. The information on the back is very simple. This one talks about just what I was saying before. You know, if you don't think you have an estate, look around you. If you own anything, you have an estate. Here's some very simple things that you need to do to plan for that estate. And oh, by the way, here's how you could include Parkland and your other favorite charities. Has our website on there, has a little box on the bottom that's highlighted. We can help you get started, gives all my contact information. So I have had great luck from these postcards because they get people's attention. This one's about beneficiary designations. So let's talk a little bit about who your prospects are for this kind of giving. And when you think about it, so people make regular gifts to your organization, that, you know, your yearly, annual campaign, whatever kind of fundraising events you do, so on. Sometimes they may make special gifts, you know, maybe you're having a capital campaign, maybe you're having a endowment campaign where they give a little larger gift than they normally have for some special reason. And bequests are the ultimate gift that a donor is going to give you, because like Martha Markey, it's coming from her assets where her wealth is and not from her checkbook. So we're talking about sometimes very sizable gifts here. So if you have any bequest history, anybody who's ever given you a bequest before, look at those people and see what commonalities they are. If you don't have any history of getting any bequest, look at 65 and older and longtime donors like Martha Markey, an older woman who gives consistently for 10 years or however long. So when we started studying this at Parkland Foundation, trying to come up with what my gold standard is for my prospect, came up with 67 or older, 5 or more consecutive years of giving, and 10 or more gifts in the last 7 years. That means at least 3 of those years they gave 2 gifts instead of 1 gift. And the amount doesn't matter. It could be $10 for each gift. And when we run this query from our database, it brings up lots of people who are already members of our 1894 Society, and it brings up lots of people who I already have as prospects for the 1894 Society. So we feel pretty strongly that we hit the gold standard on this. And you don't, people think you got to be an expert to do this. No, you don't. Most realized estate gifts are either a bequest from a will or a beneficiary designation. Something like 90% of the estate gifts that come in are wills and beneficiary designations. That's simple. You don't need to know tax law. You don't need to know trust. You don't need to know any of that technical stuff to talk to somebody about wills and beneficiary designations. So another reason why you can start implementing these ideas today. And so if I have somebody who shows an interest in including Parkland Foundation in their estate, I start the conversation very simply and very open-ended. I ask them, I say, what is it you want to do for yourself? What do you want to do for your loved ones? And how do you want to make the world a better place? And then I shut up and listen. And I ask open-ended questions if appropriate. You know, they say, well, you know, we want to make sure that my wife and I are taken care of in retirement. Well, what's that look like? Does that mean you're going to go to your lake house and go fishing every day? Or does that mean you're going to go to Paris every month? Well, we want to make sure that our kids and grandkids are taken care of. What's that look like? How much is enough? How much is too much? So start simply, ask simple open-ended questions, and spend most of your time listening. So a lot of times when, as people raising money for our nonprofits, we hear objections. You know, will you make a gift to our capital campaign? Well, you know, and there can be a long litany of reasons that that they can't do it. I kind of turn this around into opportunities to maybe show the donor how they can do both. So, I mean, how many times have you thanked a donor for a gift and they say something like, "Oh, I wish I could do more"? Happens all the time. Probably the most typical response is something like, "Oh, we appreciate every single donation we get. Every gift is important. And if you're really smart before you were talking to this person, you know what their lifetime giving was." And you say something like, "Did you know that over the years, you've given us $5,000? So that's very significant." And you thank them and leave it at that. I use that as an opportunity. If somebody says to me, "I wish I could do more," I will say, so many of our donors make their most meaningful gift through their will. Have you ever thought of including us in your plans? And the phrasing of this is very important. Many of our donors, you're creating a social norm. Lots of people have already done this. People don't want to be the first one to do something, but they're willing to join others. So you're creating a social norm, and hopefully in their head, they're thinking, people like me do things like this. So many of our donors make their most meaningful gift. And this isn't even an ask. This is so soft. I'm not asking them for anything. I'm just saying, have you ever thought of including us in your plans? That is such a soft ask. All I'm doing is planting a seed. And hopefully they think about that and maybe someday do that. I can't afford to give anymore. Somebody's retired, for example. Well, what if I showed you a way you can make a gift that costs you nothing now? And then you can get into hopefully they say, "Oh, well, how would I do that?" And you can talk about including your organization in their will, or including doing a beneficiary designation. I'd like to make a gift, but my mom's living in a nursing home and I'm helping support her while she's living in the nursing home. What if I showed you a way you could do both? And I could talk about a charitable gift annuity or a charitable trust where the mom is the beneficiary. And so she's getting the help to pay for nursing home costs. And then when the mom passes away, whatever is left goes to the charity. I need enough to retire on. I can come back. Well, what if I could show you a way to make a gift that gives you a secure income for the rest of your life and the rest of your spouse's wife? Again, talking about a charitable remainder trust, talking about a charitable gift annuity. And I never even use those words. I describe the benefits to them because as soon as you start saying things like, "Well, you need to do a charitable gift annuity," people's eyes glaze over and they shut their brain off. I one time had probably a half-hour conversation with a very sophisticated donor about doing a charitable lead trust, and I never once said the words charitable lead trust. I just talked about the benefits. I sold the sizzle, not the steak. I don't want to have to hire an attorney, or I want to keep my giving private. Well, beneficiary designations are really powerful, and more charitable estate gifts are coming through beneficiary designations. And I think that trend is going to continue. I mean, at some point, so like my own plans, I have a will, and I have one daughter. So and several charities that are getting stuff from me. But everything is done by beneficiary designation. When I die, there should be nothing left to be distributed through my will. My plan is that my daughter won't have to go through probate because I took care of everything through beneficiary designations. And in the state of Texas, you can even do the house you live in with the beneficiary designation. So you can literally give everything away that you own without having to have it go through probate and go through court. Or use a donor advised fund. Those are powerful tools. So my mentor in this business was Robert Sharp. And he one time said, donors can only give you what they got, so ask them what they got. This chart is from the Federal Reserve. It shows where the net worth in America is. 7% of it is in cash. Another about a third of it is in other financial assets that are not as liquid as cash. So retirement accounts, mutual funds, IRAs, investment accounts, some of those are liquid to a point, have to be sold and then turned into cash. And then about 2/3 is in other stuff. So if we're asking people to, if we're doing checkbook philanthropy, which is what most charities in the United States do, and that's how most donors in the United States think, is what can I write a check for? If you ask them to donate $10,000 to your capital campaign, their thought process is, can I write a check for $10,000? In almost all cases. But we're only talking about 7% of the wealth in America. We're leaving the other 93% out of the conversation. And so when we got together earlier, Joanna asked me a fabulous question. She said, what do you think the recession or the thought of a recession and stock markets declining and the war in Ukraine, all of these things that are happening, what impact is that going to have on major gifts? And wealth is perception. If you see these headlines, your perception is going to be, maybe I need to conserve. Maybe things are going to get really bad and I need to conserve. And so I can't give away my stuff, my cash. If we look at this in terms of kinds of assets, people's perception of their disposable income is very different than their perception of their wealth. So their disposable income in hard times, they're going to want to preserve that because that's what they live on. That's what pays their mortgage, and that's what pays their insurance, and that's what pays the medical bills. And so if they think hard times are coming, they're going to want to hold on to that because they have to preserve their lifestyle. But people's perception of wealth is different. They look at wealth differently. So if we can encourage donors to give from wealth rather than cash, we can get through recessions, we can get through down markets. And the simplest way to start is with stocks. So if somebody's going to give you a donation of $1,000 or more, ask them the question, do you have any stocks that are worth more than you paid for them? And if the answer is yes, say, well, maybe consider donating that instead of cash. And so let's kind of do the math. Let's say somebody bought a stock for $700 and they want to donate $1,000 to you, and their stock is now worth $1,000. So they donate that stock to you. How much did that gift cost them to make? Cost them $700 because that's what they paid for it. What do they get a tax deduction for? $1,000 because that's the current market value of it. So they have made $1,000 gift to you that only cost them $700. And the other benefit is they've avoided paying capital gains on that. So if they sold the stock and then donated the $1,000 to you, they're going to pay capital gains on that $300 difference in the value of stock. So that is the simplest way to get into asset giving, and shows the power of giving assets that have appreciated in value and the benefits that has to the donor. So this is the stuff that people own. You know, they own their house, they own other real estate, they have commercial interests, privately held business interests, mineral rights. Geez, we're in Texas. How many people have oil rights in Texas? They can donate their oil rights to you. They have intellectual property, they have art. This is where the wealth in America is. And you may be saying, geez, I wouldn't have a clue what to do if somebody said, I want to donate my house to you, or I want to donate some shares of my privately held business to you. You know, publicly traded securities, that's easy. You get those, you sell them, there's an open market for those. Privately held businesses, that gets a little more complicated. So, but I mean, there are consultants out there like Fablanthropy who can help you with that kind of stuff. There are community foundations. We're surrounded by some fabulous community foundations here in Dallas. They know how to dispose of this kind of stuff. If somebody says, oh, I've got this commercial property that I want to donate to you, and you don't have a clue what you would do to deal with that, go talk to the Communities Foundation of Texas, or the Dallas Foundation, or Catholic Foundation. I mean, there's a bunch of them in town, and say, how can you help me with this gift? And I guarantee you that they can help you with that gift. And if you think of all these assets, just think in your mind, which one do you think has the most wealth in it? You know, all of these things, which one do you think has the most wealth in it? And the answer, which is a surprise to many, is retirement plans. A third of the net worth of the United States is in retirement plans, and a quarter of that is in IRAs, because back in the 70s, some of you are way too young for that, everybody said, oh, you got to start an IRA. You got to have a retirement plan. So we started doing that. And baby boomers, which is my generation, we are the first generation that have more wealth in our retirement plans than we do in our home. Up until baby boomers, the biggest piece of net worth in anybody's portfolio was the house that they lived in. Now, baby boomers, their biggest piece of wealth is in retirement accounts. And there are conversations we can have with people about philanthropy through their IRAs and other retirement accounts, beneficiary designations. If people are old enough, 70 and a half, they can do qualified distributions from their IRAs. So everybody was told to start an IRA, so we all did. And now when people are having to take required distributions from them, they go, I don't want the extra income. I just have to pay income tax on it. And so they can give it to us instead, and that will count towards their required distribution. So we talk about being donor-centric. A lot of people throw that term around. I'm here to tell you that I think we're only truly donor-centric if we're talking to donors about donating their assets other than cash. Because just as in the stock example I gave you, they can donate that asset. Their out-of-pocket cost is less than if they donated that to you in cash. They're preserving their cash, and they're avoiding capital gains. So I encourage you to educate yourself, and at a bare minimum, how people can donate stock to your organization and regularly have conversations with people about donating stock, and then educate yourself about other assets too. And for the things like oil and gas and real estate and all of that kind of stuff, you know, make some friends at the community foundation so you feel comfortable having conversations with them about how they can help you make those donations. And we have to think about the families that we're dealing with. Families come in so many different varieties. You know, we have a traditional family, first marriage, natural born kids. We have a gay couple with an adopted kid. We have second marriages with stepchildren and their own children. So every family situation is different. We have to understand that. We have to understand that the planning for each kind of family is going to be different, and spend most of our time listening so we can learn about the family situations. Because when I ask that question, what do you want to do for your loved ones? For this family, the answer might be different than for this family. So we have to listen. And again, going back to my mentor, Robert Sharp, he said something very impactful to me. He said, the really good organizations know how to ask for money. The few really exceptional nonprofit organizations know how to say thank you. The power of thank you is powerful. Stewardship is powerful. I one time called a donor to thank him for a $10 contribution, only to find out in the conversation that we were a beneficiary of a trust that he had set up. I had no idea, and I was calling to thank him for a $10 donation. Here's some resources, and this slide deck is a PDF, is going to be made available to you. So you're going to have all of this. These are some great resources. If go on, the length of this link is crazy. Go on to YouTube and search for Dr. Russell James, and you will find a whole series of videos. You can basically take his graduate level course in charitable financial planning by watching his YouTubes, and you'll get a tremendous amount of education. And here's some other resources that you're going to have as well. And with that, I did leave some time for questions. I'm going to open it up to questions. So please ask me anything you want. Some of that I kind of rushed through for the sake of time. Go ahead and take yourself off mute and ask anything you want.
I have one. What have you found has been the most effective way to kind of officially launch your program, to say, okay, we have this? Is it email, website, a combination of everything above, or has there been some special tool?
I wouldn't even think of it as launching your program. Just start doing some of this stuff. Just know in your mind, okay, I'm going to start focusing at least a little bit of my effort on charitable gift planning and see if we can secure some estate gifts. As soon as we hang up, put one of those PSs on your email just to get people thinking. You know, it could be as simple as, P.S. Have you ever considered including us in your will? That's simple. And see if you get any response. You know, 99% of the people who read your emails are not going to react to that. But if one person responds and said, oh, I never thought about that. Tell me about that. So you're not launching a program, you're changing your mindset of what are some simple steps I can take to help donors think about making their ultimate gift to my organization.
Do we have other questions for Kent?
LaSherry, do you? If you're speaking, it is extremely faint. I don't think we can hear you. You might put a question in the chat and we can read it for you. That's easy.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I was saying he kind of answered my question. I was going to ask about board engagement and how you engage your board, but that last question you just said, I can't remember. If you can send us that. You said you just told Hannah that last question you just said what you told her. I can't remember verbatim.
You're not launching a program, you're changing your mindset. You're just going to take some simple steps to encourage people to think about making their ultimate gift to you. But that's a great point about the board, because that should be your prime suspects. I mean, hopefully all of your board members are donors. So at a board meeting, just have some conversations with them, you know, say, we want to focus some attention on trying to obtain estate gifts for our organization. And, you know, you're our inside family, and it would sure be great if some of you would consider doing that. And if you do, please tell us, and maybe let us use the story so we can tell other people in the community that, oh, look, you know, one of our board members decided to do this. How wonderful is that? Is this something you would consider doing? So board, I'm glad you asked that, because the board is key. If you can't get your board to buy into this, you need a new board.
All right. Thanks so much, Kent.
Other questions?
Were there other
Yeah.
things in the chat?
I feel like when you ask for an ultimate gift, it suggests that people are going to die. Now, as far as I know, we're all going to die, but people don't like to think of mortality per se. So how do you approach that?
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, if oh, I gotta turn off my timer because I set it in case I got talking too long, which I sometimes do. Yeah, like in your promotions, in your conversations, you don't want to have death talk, because yes, people will immediately turn you off. People don't want to.
Yeah.
We're all going to die, yes, but we don't want to think about it. So make sure that, you know, in your newsletter, don't say, well, when you die, you could make your most significant gift to our organization. Yeah, no, don't do that, because nobody's going to do it. But you know, like my postcards, they're just funny. They're not. There's no death talk in these. It's like, it's estate planning. It's not rocket science. Here's some simple steps you can do. Using the statement I said, that, you know, many of our donors have made their most significant gift to Parkland Foundation through their will. Is that something you've ever thought about doing? You know, I didn't say anything about you dying. Now, in their head, they may go, well, yeah, that means when I die, but, you know, that's kind of the reality of this. But how you frame it and the words you use are very important.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Who else has a question? Elizabeth. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I think she might have been saying she didn't have a question.
Oh, okay. So I have two questions, actually. One is about gift acceptance policies, because you referenced some gifts that people might make that would be very difficult for a small organization to handle. I mean, beyond just getting help from the Communities Foundation. But things like commercial property, you know, if that commercial property had a gas station on it or a chemical plant or something, you're dealing with some significant EPA costs of, you know, that resolve to the whoever owns the property, regardless of whether you were the one to get to dump the chemicals. Or you gave the example of livestock. If someone told me we were going to get a herd of cattle, I wouldn't know what to do with that. So,
And either would I. And I've
yeah.
been
So a
doing this
gift
for 20
acceptance
years.
policy. Could you talk a little bit quickly about a gift acceptance policy?
That's a great question. Everybody should have a gift acceptance policy, and there should be procedures behind those gift acceptance policies. Like if you say, yes, we will accept real estate, you should have procedures that describe what you need, the steps you need to do to accept real estate. And, you know, some of the worst gifts I have ever had have been real estate. I mean, some of the biggest problems I've had have been with real estate gifts. You know, you need to do a market analysis. You need to do a phase one environmental study. I mean, the first thing I do is I drive by and look at it. And I mean, there was somebody wanted to, when I was up in the Chicago area working for a college, somebody wanted to donate a house to us. So before I did anything else, engaged a realtor, you know, did the phase one, the market analysis, all of that kind of stuff, I got in my car and I went and looked at it. And it was a dilapidated house, probably would have had to have been torn down. And it was on a very tiny, odd-shaped lot. So I talked to the city people and asked what the setback rules are, you know, because they have, when you build, you can only build so close to the property line. And if they would have torn that house down, they could not have built a new house on that lot because there wasn't enough setback to build a house that would have been appropriate for that neighborhood. So I just disclaimed the gift. I said, thanks, but no thanks. So, and there are, if you don't have gift acceptance policies, or if they were written 10 years ago, they need to be reviewed. You should have them. You know, my email is on there. If you have questions about that, shoot me an email.
And my other question was about, I think your point about putting the information on your website, including your EIN number, to make it easy for people to include you in their estate planning or as a beneficiary. But I think people too often don't think about the impact of your Charity Navigator or Guide Star situation, because people that are considering a gift, a fairly large testamentary gift, might go there to see what does it say there about the organization. And too often with a small organization, there may be very little information. And we're probably going to have a brown bag session on this soon, on how to make sure you optimize your Charity Navigator and Guide Star profiles. But make sure that you're paying attention to that, because you don't want a donor to be all ready to say, oh, I love this organization, I'm going to give a gift. And then they go look at that just to make sure, and then they find stuff that, or they find nothing, or they find information that, you know, causes them to hesitate. So maybe speak to that, Kent, if you would.
Boy, that's a good point. I don't know if I have anything off the top of my head how to overcome that.
Well, I think you can be proactive in terms of, you know, if there is information that you feel is detrimental, or you just don't have any information, you know, go ahead and be proactive and either correct it or provide it. That's not that hard to do. And like I said, we're going to do a session on that for our small organizations coming up this summer, so we don't fall into that.
That's brilliant. Yeah, because so I've worked for some very small nonprofits, and they aren't as big on the radar as the hospitals and the colleges and things like that, the big organizations.
And I would say, to Kent's point early in his presentation, you never know where a gift might come from, and the difference between a known and an unknown testamentary gift. And we've had it happen twice, where an artist who performed in our jazz series, and our artists typically are not wealthy people, gave us bequests in their wills, and they both, in both cases, they died fairly young. We had no idea that we were designated, and a check comes in the mail for $35,000 all of a sudden from an estate that of someone we didn't even know was capable of making a gift and had never made a gift before, had only just performed. So just because someone is an artist or works in a small organization doesn't mean that they are not in a position to do something just because they care about your organization.
That's a great point. So when trying to identify your prospects, who are the people that are closest to you? Performers. If you have volunteers are wonderful. I mean, because if they're dedicated enough to your organization that they're going to give of their time on a regular basis, they may also seriously consider leaving something through their estate. Maybe they can't give anything now, but that's a way that they can. Wonderful idea.
Does anyone else have a question before we let Kent go? If not, I'm going to say thank you so much. That was really excellent. I'm also going to say, Kent, if you decide to do the workshops that you had done pre-pandemic again, let us know. I will tell everybody that was some of the best fundraising information I ever got, was attending those workshops. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I think we all learned a lot today.
Wonderful. So good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent.
Thanks, everybody.